What hurt the most wasn't the cheating. It was watching a pregnant woman face heartbreak completely alone. She lost her mother, her marriage, and the friend she trusted most, almost overnight. Yet, despite the humiliation and betrayal, she kept fighting for her unborn child. Then everything changes when a shocking inheritance is revealed, turning the helpless wife into one of the most powerful women in the room. And the people who betrayed her soon learn that some women don't break after pain, they become unstoppable.
Imagine bleeding out in the snow while your newborn gets cold in your arms. My husband's family had just thrown me down a stone staircase in a blizzard. They told me I was trash, completely worthless. They didn't know that in 4 hours, I would receive $2.3 billion, and I was going to make every one of them pay. My name is Emma Harrington, and this is my real story. This is about how I came back from near death to tear down their whole world. It is a story of a monstrous family that learned a hard lesson. You never dismiss a woman you believe is weak. For 3 years, they made my life a living hell. They shared my deepest pain with their 500,000 followers. They even paid a corrupt judge to steal my baby away from me. They believed their money and influence made them untouchable. They were very, very wrong. When I walked into that meeting 8 weeks later, I was a new woman. I had platinum blonde hair, my own billion-dollar company, and 4 million people watching me live. The pure shock on their faces when they knew it was me, that one look made all the pain worthwhile. But the thing that happened after is what everyone still remembers. They signed a legal document but did not read the details. It was a vicious trick they had used on me so many times. Life has a funny way of evening the score. You will want to hear how this all ends. The chaos in the courtroom, the moment the Federal Bureau of Investigation showed up, and what happened to them. You will not believe it. If anyone has ever made you feel like you are nothing, then this story is for you. But first, I need to ask you for a quick favor. If you believe in justice, please go ahead and hit the like button. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in my position. Please subscribe, as the story I am telling next week is even more unbelievable. You really do not want to be the one who misses it. But before I share this incredible story, there is something you need to understand. This is not simply about revenge. It is about finding your own power when the whole world says you are powerless. It is about a woman they saw as nobody who chose to become indestructible. If you have ever been belittled, you understand this feeling perfectly. This story is proof that your suffering is not where your story ends. Sometimes it reshapes you into someone incredibly strong. So let us return to the day my world fell apart. It was February 14th, Valentine's Day, when my life was destroyed. They pulled me across the frozen marble floor. My baby was only 3 days old, crying in my arms. Then they threw us down the stone steps and out into that horrible storm. They had no idea that a $2.3 billion inheritance was just 4 hours away, and I was going to spend every last cent of it to make them sorry. I am Emma Harrington. This is the true story of how I went from dying in the snow to destroying an entire family. You need to hear the ending. The video of that meeting in the boardroom has millions of views. It was the last step in a long plan that completely ruined them. You have to see the part where 4 million people watched them beg me to forgive them. Let us go back to the start of this nightmare. 3 days earlier, I was in a room at Mercy General Hospital. My body was recovering from an emergency cesarean section. The pain was just awful. A burning line stretched across my stomach, making it hard to breathe. But that physical agony was small compared to the hollowness in my soul. My husband, Michael, had been gone for 52 hours. He had not come to visit me, not even once. I had counted each one of those hours. The nurses would look at me with such sad, pitying eyes. I could hear them whispering about me in the hall when they thought I was asleep. I kept telling myself he was just very busy at work. I prayed that he would appear in the doorway. It hurts to remember how trusting I used to be. It was Valentine's Day, on February the 14th. The bitter irony felt like some kind of a cruel joke. My daughter, Grace, slept in a small bassinet right next to my bed. Her sweet face had a slight yellow color from jaundice. The doctor told me it was common and not to be scared, but every time I saw her, a knot of fear tightened in my stomach. She was so very small and defenseless. She was absolutely perfect. And her father had not even shown up to see her. I had intravenous lines in both of my arms and was connected to a catheter. The medicine they gave me every 4 hours barely touched the pain. It was a steady 7 on a scale of 10. Every little movement was torture. At around 11 o'clock that night, my best friend, Rebecca, walked into the room. She worked as a nurse in the intensive care unit and came to see me on her breaks. "Emma," Rebecca said quietly. Her voice was full of stress and tension. She looked scared for me, not just sad for me. "I have to show you this. Just try to keep breathing. It's better if you see it from me." She handed me her cell phone. The Instagram app was already on the screen. I just stared at it, unable to move. In that cold, white hospital room, my entire life shattered. It was Michael's profile page. He had put up a picture of himself with another woman. She looked stunning and happy, and she was obviously pregnant. Her hand was on her round belly in that classic pose of a mother-to-be. They were at a fancy restaurant I had always wanted to visit. He always said no to taking me there. The words below the picture said, "With my real family, living my real life now. A new and honest start." He had put it up 6 hours before. It already had 47,000 likes. The comments were a bizarre mix of well wishes and complete confusion. "Wait a second, aren't you married?" one person wrote. "Who is she?" another one asked. But the majority of comments were just heart emojis, celebrating his courage. I felt a pressure around my chest, like it was hard to get any air. "Emma?" Rebecca whispered. But the truth was even worse. He was telling people at the hospital that I had manipulated him into marrying me. He was saying he was now free to be with the woman he really loved. We were married for 3 years. For 3 years, I tried my best to be the ideal wife for him. I just wanted to be accepted by him and by his family. I gave him 3 years of my life and every bit of my trust. And he was with someone else the entire time. My phone started vibrating on the table next to the bed. It was a number I had never seen before. I was too broken to even consider answering it. My heart hurt too much to say a word, so I just let it keep ringing. I did not even really see the name on the screen. W. Harrington, private. I would find out much later that it was my grandfather calling me at 11:47 that night. He was calling to arrange our very first meeting. I still think about how different my life might have been if I had picked up that phone. At that exact moment, Dr. Morrison came in with my release forms. She was the doctor who had delivered my baby, Grace. She was a nice, older lady with a soft voice and a concerned look in her eyes. "Mrs. Sterling," she said, her tone gentle and cautious. "I need to speak with you about something. Our social services department has noted some concerns. Your husband hasn't been here, and there have been a few—" The door suddenly flew open and hit the wall with a loud bang. My mother-in-law, Victoria Sterling, marched into the room. Her expensive designer coat was likely worth more than my whole car. She held a Hermes bag tightly, and her eyes were filled with fury. Michael's father, Jonathan, walked right behind her. His costly suit was a clear statement of his wealth and influence. Then came Madison, Michael's sister. She was holding up her phone, already recording everything that was happening. The final person to walk in was Alexis, the woman from that Instagram picture. She had a superior smile on her face. She put one hand on her pregnant belly like it was a prize she had just been awarded. Dr. Morrison attempted to stand in their way. "Excuse me, but visiting hours have ended, and Mrs." Victoria cut her off with just a wave of her hand. "We are this woman's family. We have a right to be in this room." She then pushed a big folder toward Dr. Morrison. "These papers are official documents from Child Protective Services. My daughter-in-law is emotionally unwell. She is not a suitable mother. We are here to make sure our granddaughter is safe." I just stared at them, completely in shock. My mind could not understand what was going on. Child Protective Services? Official papers? Nothing about it was real. That folder was full of completely fake documents. They had made up false claims that I had postpartum psychosis. It also had a fake psychiatric report, signed by Dr. Gerald Rothman, the family's personal doctor. The report said, my rights as a parent should be taken away until I had a full mental health check. Dr. Morrison's hands were shaking as she looked over the documents. I could see the conflict in her expression. She understood this was a terrible injustice, but she was helpless against them. The Sterling family had recently given a huge amount of money to the hospital, which gave them a lot of power. Victoria then walked over to my bed. Her voice was pure poison. Your days of ruining my son's life are over. This pathetic little drama ends now. I felt weak, completely disoriented. The pain medicine left my mind in a thick fog. What are you talking about? I could barely whisper. While I cradled my newborn daughter, Alexis laughed a cruel, sharp laugh. She walked to my hospital bed and pulled a folder from her purse. She said, "That baby is not his son. We did a DNA test." Alexis showed me a paper that looked like a fake lab report. The document said there was a 0% chance my husband was the father. My head was spinning. How was that possible? I had been in the hospital the whole time. You need the mother's permission for a baby's DNA test. But there it was, an official-looking paper, right in front of my face. Just then, Madison started a live stream on Instagram. I saw my own face on her phone screen. I looked pale and broken in my hospital gown. Madison's voice was cheerful in a way that made me sick. "Hello, everyone," she announced. "You wanted to know about my brother's gold-digging wife. Well, here is the truth. Liv. She is trying to trap him with a baby that is not even his. Satig." I could only watch in horror as hateful comments flooded the screen. "Oh my gosh, is this real? She looks so pathetic. Your brother deserves so much better." 500,000 people were watching the worst moment of my life. Victoria leaned in close, her face inches from mine. "Let me tell you who you are, Emma. You are a complete joke. You were just a $100,000 bet my son made in college. The bet was to see if he could marry the poorest girl in school and stay with her for 3 years. Then she took out her phone and showed me a video. It was Michael, clearly drunk at his bachelor party 4 years ago. He was laughing with 7 of his friends. One of them said, "Dude, 3 years with a girl from the slums for 100 grand? That is the easiest cash I have ever heard of." Michael slurred his words. "I will just close my eyes and imagine someone else when I am with her." Their cruel laughter echoed in the hospital room. In that one moment, my whole world fell apart. 3 years. Every "bye, I love you," every anniversary dinner was all a complete lie. All my work to fit into their world, to be good enough for the Sterlings, was for nothing. It was all just a twisted game. Then Madison looked at my wrist. She saw the simple silver charm bracelet from my mother. It was the only thing I had left of her. "Oh, what is that ugly thing?" Madison scoffed. "Your sad little family heirloom." She reached out to rip it from my arm. I pulled my hand back, and a sharp pain from my surgery shot through my body. "Do not touch that. It is all I have from my mother." Then Victoria slapped me hard across the face. The loud sound filled the quiet room. Dr. Morrison gasped. "That is assault. I am calling security." Jonathan's voice was cold as ice. He said, "We are the security here. This is Harrington Memorial Hospital. My family paid for this entire wing. You can call anyone you want." The terrible thing was, the hospital was named after my own grandfather. They were threatening me in a place my family built. Just then, Rebecca rushed into the room. She yelled, "Tut-tut-tut, what is going on in here?" When hospital security arrived, they looked very conflicted. They knew Jonathan was a big donor, a powerful man. They just stood there, frozen, not sure what to do. Victoria then pushed a thick pile of divorce papers at my chest. She told me, "Sign these now, or Child Protective Services will take your daughter tomorrow morning." She continued, "We have doctors who will say you are mentally unstable. You will lose her forever. The pain medicine made the room spin. Every small move sent a new wave of pain through my C-section cut. The world felt like it was tilting around me. "Please," I begged, my voice breaking as tears ran down my face. "Just please do not take my baby." My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. But I signed the papers. Alexis leaned close to me. I felt her warm breath as she whispered, "Did you really think someone like you could raise a sterling child? You are a nobody. You will always be a nobody." Victoria gave a cold, winning smile. She said, "You are discharged. Come to the mansion tomorrow for your trash. After that, disappear from our lives forever." And then they left. I completely fell apart. My body shook with sobs I could not control. Rebecca tried to calm me. She said, "We have to call the police. This is not legal. They forced you to sign." "No," I whispered. "They have so many lawyers and endless money. I have nothing. I just need my baby to be safe." That is when Dr. Morrison quietly took out her phone. I did not know she was recording everything. I had no idea she was an undercover reporter who took her job very seriously. "I have it all on video," she said with a calm voice. "What they did is called coercion." I was too broken to really understand what she was saying. It will not change anything, I thought to myself. People like them always win. But that recording was about to change my life. I just did not see it yet. The next morning, on February 15th, I called a car to take me to the Sterling Mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. Michael always controlled the money, so I did not have my own car. My baby Grace was safe in a car seat from the hospital. One thin blanket was wrapped around her. She looked so small and helpless. She was only 3 days old, and her life was already a complete nightmare. The mansion came into sight. It was a huge Georgian-style house that looked like generations of old money. In the 3 years I lived there, it never felt like a home. Surprisingly, my keys still worked, and I walked through the giant front doors. The staff I thought were my friends would not even look at me. I even saw a few of them smirk. All my things were in trash bags, thrown on the driveway. With a shaking hand, I walked to what they called my room. It was not a real bedroom, because Michael and I never shared a bed. They gave me a room in the servants' quarters, a constant reminder of my place. The room was completely destroyed. My clothes were soaking wet, thrown in the garden fountain. My books were torn to pieces, their pages scattered everywhere. The precious photos of my mother were now ashes in the fireplace. I could still smell the smoke. Her jewelry was gone. A minute later, I saw Madison in the master bedroom, wearing it. She had on my mother's pearl necklace, the piece I loved most. Madison just laughed and took a selfie. "This old thing," she asked. "It looks so much better on me, right? Finders keepers." Leaving that house brought back so many painful memories. I remembered my first Thanksgiving there. Victoria made me serve dinner. While her family ate, she told me, "The help does not sit at the table, dear." Michael did nothing. The next year, I wore a simple dress to a charity event, and Victoria told me to stay out of sight. Jonathan made me work the coat check, while Madison showed off her expensive dress. For our third Christmas, their gifts cost thousands of dollars. Michael gave me a new vacuum cleaner. They all thought it was very funny. Victoria said, "Now you can finally be useful." It was 3 years of planned, painful humiliation. I put the few things they had not destroyed into one bag. Grace started to cry. She needed to be fed and changed, but I had nowhere to go. As I got to the front door, Victoria's voice came over the intercom. "Emma, dear," she called out, "please join us in the grand hall. We are all waiting for you." A cold, sick feeling grew in my stomach. The grand hall was a huge room with marble floors I had polished for hours. A crystal chandelier, with a small country, hung from the high ceiling. The entire Sterling family was there, arranged like a panel of judges. Victoria sat in the middle, like a queen on her throne, with Jonathan beside her. Madison stood on the staircase, already recording on her phone. Michael was by a far wall and would not look at me. Alexis held onto Michael's arm, a nasty smile on her face. 4 large security guards I did not recognize blocked the door. Victoria's voice was as cold as the floor. She said, "Before you go, you will get on your knees and apologize. You will say you are sorry for wasting 3 years and for trapping my son with your child." Jonathan's voice was a low and nasty threat. "You will kneel, or we will phone every shelter in the state." He went on, "We will call you a dangerous, unstable mother. The authorities will hunt you down," I repeated. "I will not kneel." Victoria simply gave the guards a nod. Everything happened in a blur. A guard grabbed both of my arms. I cried out, "Please, I am holding my baby. You will hurt her." A second guard tore Grace from my arms. The pain was sudden and sharp. The quick motion ripped open the stitches from my surgery. I felt a rush of warm wetness spreading through my clothes. It was my own blood. Grace let out a terrible cry, the sound of a scared newborn. Madison was filming the whole thing live. "This is what happens when a low-life gold digger gets what she deserves," she told her audience. "You are all watching instant karma." Hateful comments began to flood the screen. She had it coming. "Throw her out of there." 500,000 people were watching my entire life fall apart. The guards started to pull me across the floor. I was too weak from my operation to fight back. The loss of blood was making my head spin. My shoulder slammed into the sharp corner of a marble pillar. I heard a sick, popping sound as a white-hot pain shot through my arm. My bracelet caught on the column, and its main charm was ripped off. A maid nearby quickly picked it up from the floor and slipped it into her pocket. That little act of theft was not my biggest problem. I could only think about the pain. There was blood everywhere, and I pleaded with them to stop. Alexis just stood there and laughed at my suffering. "She is so pathetic, Michael," she said with a smirk. "Is this the woman you wasted 3 years of your life on?" Michael's voice was cold and empty. "Get her out of my home." He did not show any sign of guilt. 2 guards dragged me to the enormous front doors. When they opened them, a wild blizzard was raging outside. The air felt like it was below 0 degrees. The snow was falling so thick I could hardly see 10 feet away. The wind howled like an animal. They shoved me down the hard stone stairs. I tumbled down all 5 of them. Every single step sent a new wave of pain through me. I landed hard on my hurt shoulder. I fell into a pile of snow, and my blood instantly turned it red. They threw my handbag next to me like it was garbage. The few things inside spilled out: my medicine, a few diapers, and 1 tiny baby outfit. It was all I owned in the world. Then a guard tossed my daughter Grace at me. I was able to catch her and held her close to my body to keep her warm. From the doorway, Alexis yelled, "If you ever come back here, we are phoning the police." Then Victoria's cruel voice sliced through the storm. "This is exactly where trash belongs." The heavy door slammed closed, and the sound echoed in the night. I sat there in the snow, bleeding with my shoulder out of its socket. Grace's cries grew weak, and a terrible fear washed over me. My phone was smashed. I did not have any money or a coat. My thin hospital slippers were already soaked through. In that moment, I believed Grace and I were going to die. "I'm so sorry, my sweet girl," I whispered, trying to shield her from the wind. "Your mommy did everything she could." Then Grace went completely still. The quiet was much scarier than any crying. A baby should not be silent in the freezing cold. "Please do not go," I begged her small, still form. "You are my entire world." My sight started to go dark at the edges. The cold was winning. My body was giving up. I shut my eyes, ready for the end. At that exact moment, bright lights cut through the thick snow. 3 big black cars emerged from the storm, and they pulled up right in front of me. Their doors opened before they even fully stopped. A very well-dressed older man in a perfect suit stepped out, holding an umbrella. At 3:47 in the morning, he looked like a top executive. A calm, deep voice said, "Miss Emma Catherine Morgan, we are relieved we found you in time." I could hardly form words. Who are you?" He knelt down beside me in the snow, ruining his expensive clothing. He did not seem to care. "Your grandfather sent me," he said with a kind tone. "We have to get you both somewhere safe immediately." Behind him, a medical team from Harrington Global Medical was rushing toward us. They carried heated blankets and medical supplies. "Grandfather?" I asked, completely confused. "My mother's father passed away before I was born. I do not have a—" "Yes, you do," he said gently. "His name is William James Harrington. We are taking you to the Harrington Medical Center right away. Your daughter is roughly 10 minutes from developing severe hypothermia." The medical crew was incredibly fast and professional. They quickly wrapped both me and Grace in special heated blankets. They inserted a needle in my arm for fluids and placed a tiny oxygen mask over Grace's face. Her breathing was dangerously shallow. One person supported my injured shoulder. Others applied pressure to my wounds to control the bleeding. In just a few minutes, they were lifting us into a warm car. The heat felt like paradise after the bitter cold. The older man, whose name I later learned was Richard Blackwell, came with us. He was calmly giving orders, completely in charge of everything. We sped through the storm with a skilled driver who made it look easy. Richard was on his phone, and his voice was firm and confident. "Dr. Anderson, our arrival is in about 8 minutes. I have a 28-year-old female, 3 days post C-section. She has blood loss, a probable dislocated shoulder, and is hypothermic. Her 3-day-old infant is in critical condition from exposure to the extreme cold. Please have the neonatal intensive care unit and a full trauma team on standby." A paramedic checked my daughter Grace's temperature. 94.5, he reported quietly. "We need to bring her core temperature up very slowly. A newborn's temperature is supposed to be between 97 and 99 degrees. If it dropped to 93, her organs would start to shut down. I could only lie there and watch, feeling helpless, as they fought to save my child. I was too weak to do anything but trust these strangers, who had appeared from the storm. We arrived at the Harrington Private Medical Center at 4:15 in the morning. It was nothing like Mercy General, the hospital where Grace was born. This place was obviously built for the extremely wealthy. It had shining marble floors and real art hanging on the walls. The rooms were more like suites in a 5-star hotel. Grace was rushed directly to the neonatal intensive care unit. A team of 6 doctors was already there for her. They started warming treatments right away and attached her to monitors. As they cared for her, the lead doctor, Dr. Anderson, said, "You arrived just in the nick of time. 5 more minutes might have led to permanent damage." I was taken to a private room that felt more like a luxurious hotel suite. There, the medical team put my dislocated shoulder back in place. The procedure was very painful, but it was necessary. They also had to re-stitch the incision from my surgery. The staff gave me a blood transfusion, intravenous fluids, and antibiotics. They explained that my injuries and the cold had put me at a very high risk for infection. Finally, they gave me a medication for the pain, and I began to feel some relief. I came to 7 hours later, at 11 in the morning. Bright sunlight streamed in through the window. For a second, I wished it had all been a terrible nightmare. But then I noticed the bandages on my shoulder and the tubes in my arm. A rush of panic hit me. "Grace? Where's my Grace?" Just then, Dr. Morrison, the same doctor who had delivered Grace, walked into the room. "Emma, please try to stay calm," she said in a gentle voice. "Grace is stable. She is in the intensive care unit, and they are watching her very carefully. She is going to be fine." "What are you doing here?" I asked her, totally bewildered. "Mr. Blackwell phoned me and explained everything," she said. "I quit my job at Mercy General this morning. I refuse to work for a hospital that would allow something like that to happen to a patient." The next person to visit was my friend Rebecca. She hurried to my bed and gave me a soft, emotional hug. "Oh, Emma, I was so worried," she said. "You were not answering your phone, so I drove to the Sterling mansion. I saw the bloodstains in the snow. I feared the worst had happened. I am okay," I said to her. "We are both safe now." At that moment, Richard Blackwell came in carrying a leather folder. "Ladies, I need to speak with Emma alone," he said. "This information must remain confidential." Rebecca and Dr. Morrison still had worried looks as they left. Richard took a seat in a chair beside my bed. A nurse then wheeled in my daughter, Grace, who was in a small, portable incubator. She still had wires connected to her, but she looked so peaceful. Seeing my baby girl safe and breathing made me start to cry again. "Emma," Richard began softly, "your mother's birth name was Catherine Harrington," he went on. "Her father was William James Harrington, the founder and head of Harrington Global Industries." Richard handed me a picture of an older man. He had kind eyes, but also a very powerful presence. I did not know who he was. My mother never discussed her family. She only told me they had all passed away. Richard explained what had occurred. When my mother was 19 years old, she had a terrible fight with her father and ran away from home. The fight was over my father, James Morgan. William believed that James was only interested in my mother's inheritance, and he was correct. But my mother was headstrong and wanted to make her own way. She left home without taking any of the family money. She changed her name, moved to Ohio, and worked 3 jobs to raise me by herself after my father left us when I was just 2 years old. She was far too proud to ask her father for any help. And he was too proud to tell her he was sorry. They were both incredibly stubborn, and their pride built a wall between them, even with all their love. That wall stood until my mother died in a car accident 5 years ago. William was absolutely devastated. He had been watching over her from a distance, but he never made the choice to call. After she was gone, he started to look for me. Richard continued, "He finally found you 2 years ago, right after you married Michael Sterling." My chest tightened, and I could hardly breathe. "For the last 2 years, William has been protecting you. He hired a private security team to follow you, and had cameras installed all through the Sterling house." Richard then showed me the video recordings. I watched Victoria make me serve drinks at her parties, as if I were a servant. I saw Jonathan force me to do hard labor, with no pay. I had to listen to Madison's cruel insults, and I saw Michael stand by and do nothing to stop it. "So why did he never help me?" I asked, my voice trembling. Richard explained that William wanted to intervene so badly, but his lawyers, Richard included, advised him to wait. They needed to build an unbreakable legal case for my inheritance. This was to prevent the Sterlings from claiming I only married Michael for the money. If they could prove that, they might have a right to challenge the will. They were creating a special trust just to shield me from them. The entire time, the plan was for William to meet you on February 15th, which is today. "The call from a private number last night," I whispered. Richard gave a small nod. "That was William. He was calling from his plane over London. He wanted you to know he was coming to the hospital this morning to see you at last." For the very first time. Richard's own voice was heavy with sadness. His plane landed at 6 in the morning. He went directly to his car. "I called him to set up your meeting. He wanted to know how you were. I had to inform him that you had already left the hospital and we had no idea where you were." A location tracker showed that you were at the Sterling residence. A location tracker? "It was placed inside the bracelet," Richard explained, "the one that had belonged to your mother. The bracelet I wore every single day. William had a medical tracking device installed inside the charm. It was waterproof, had a battery that would last 5 years, and included heat sensors. I instinctively reached for my wrist, but the bracelet was gone. It must have come off when I fell into the snow. That is the reason we found you. At 3 in the morning, the heat sensor activated an emergency alarm. It alerted us that your body temperature was falling to a critical level. I called William immediately to let him know you were in danger. He pulled up the live security feed from the Sterling house right away. Richard then played that very video for me on his tablet. I witnessed the entire event. Madison was even streaming it live. I watched them drag me outside and shove me down the stairs. I saw the red stain on the white snow, and my daughter, Grace, looking so small and still. Every single second was clearly marked with a timestamp. William saw that video at 7:05 this morning while he was sitting in his car. Richard's voice was filled with grief. At 7:07, his driver called for help. William was having a severe heart attack. An ambulance arrived at 7:21. He was declared dead at 7:07 in the morning. The timing of it all was just a cruel twist of fate. Emma, you have to understand this, Richard said, his tone growing firm again. When they cast you out at 3 in the morning, you were nothing to them. You were poor and weak, just as they always said you were. But only 4 hours later, at 7:07, you inherited his entire $2.3 billion estate, he went on. They abandoned you in the snow with absolutely nothing. But as you were lying there, you were on the verge of becoming a billionaire. They did not have a clue. I could only stare at him, my mind unable to process what I was hearing. Your grandfather witnessed their cruelty and left you with the means to ruin them. Richard passed me a thick envelope. My name was written on the front in William's handwriting. I read his words as my tears started to fall. My dearest Emma, the letter started. If you are reading this, it means I am gone. I am so very sorry it took me this long to find you. I was on my way to meet you, to apologize for failing your mother and for allowing that family to treat you so poorly. I became too focused on all the legal details to protect you. I needed to be certain that no one could ever steal what was rightfully yours. But I should have focused on your safety above all else. I saw the security footage this morning. When I watched them push you and your baby into that storm, I knew I had failed. My heart just gave out. But I can still keep you safe. Everything that I have built now belongs to you. The $2.3 billion, the 40 companies, and all the properties in 18 countries. It is all yours now. I want you to take charge of this empire. Show them what our Harrington family is made of. You must not ever let them make you feel small again, my grandfather's letter said. Make them pay for every single tear. You are not nobody. You are my granddaughter. I clutched the letter as my whole body shook with sobs. Next to me, my daughter Grace was fast asleep, finally safe from harm. Richard, my grandfather's attorney, said, "The trust is now in effect. The entire estate has been transferred to your name," he added. "There are no delays and no court battles. As of 8 o'clock this morning, you are the new head of Harrington Global. The Sterlings have no idea." I looked up at him, my face wet with tears, but my eyes were filled with resolve. A new, harder feeling was taking root inside me. "I want to know every single one of their company's weaknesses," I said. For the very first time, Richard allowed himself a small smile. "That is precisely what your grandfather would have said." The next day, February 16th, I was sitting in a wheelchair in the main conference room. My body was still weak, but my mind was clearer than ever. My daughter Grace was in a stroller beside me. A nurse watched over her. Her little cheeks finally had a healthy pink glow. Richard set a large pile of folders on the table in front of me. Every single one contained a devastating secret about the Sterling family. He began with their most urgent problem. Sterling Industries is about to go under. The company was drowning in $83 million of debt. He showed me records that proved Jonathan had stolen $12 million from his own employees' funds. Another $31 million was lost because of his horrible business choices. In addition to that, they owed $40 million in commercial loans. Richard told me that without a huge amount of cash, the company would declare bankruptcy in less than 3 months. He pointed out that just last month, Jonathan had tried to get a $75 million government contract through our company. That contract was their final hope, and we had the power to either approve it or deny it. Richard looked me straight in the eye. "The decision is yours. You are the chief executive officer." After that, he handed me the file on Victoria. It was about her personal project, the Sterling-style boutiques. She had 5 shops, and each one was located in a building owned by Harrington Global. Richard pointed out that her leases were due for renewal in only 47 days. She was already $480,000 late on her rent. But the most stunning secret was her tax evasion. We had solid evidence that she had hidden $2.3 million from the government. I looked over at him and asked, "Can we send this information to the authorities?" He replied, "I have an anonymous tip ready to go. I am just waiting for your signal." At that moment, an investigator named James Crawford gave me the folder on Madison. It revealed Madison Sterling is 32 years old but tells people she is 26 online. He put her driver's license next to a picture from her social media. The birth years did not match. She also had a history of secret cosmetic surgeries. She had a nose job in 2019 and got breast implants in 2020. She also received regular injections. In 2021, she had a significant operation to change her body shape. Her modeling agreement with the prestige agency had a firm clause against any surgeries that was not disclosed. This gave them the right to cancel her contract without notice, I asked. And who is the owner of the prestige agency? Richard smiled. As of yesterday, you are. Harrington Global bought the agency 2 weeks ago. Madison had absolutely no idea. The last folder on the desk was from Michael. The bet he had made back in college was all there in a group chat with 8 other people. Nobody ever deleted the messages. Brad Miller, who is 23, had typed, "There is no way you can stay married to that poor girl for 3 years." Michael Sterling's text read, "I will bet you $100,000 I can do it." He sent another that said, "It is going to be the easiest money I ever made." Another person in the chat then asked, "What if she discovers the truth?" Michael Sterling replied, "She is never going to know. She is too naive and desperate to ever figure it out." The investigator also provided a video. This clip was longer than the one Victoria had shown me. In this recording, Michael said he would close his eyes and just imagine I was Alexis. The entire group started laughing. The report also showed Michael had embezzled $3.8 million from Sterling Industries. He was using that money to finance his lavish lifestyle with Alexis. The file also showed that Jonathan knew about the theft but covered it up to save the family's reputation. The last folder was about Alexis Beaumont, which was not her real name. The investigator told me, "Her birth name is Alexandra Marie Thompson." That. He then showed me her police mugshot from California, taken in the year 2019. She was a known con artist who had 3 different fraud cases. The first case was from 2018. She had gotten engaged to a very wealthy technology executive. She faked a pregnancy, scammed him out of $400,000, and then she vanished. The second case was in 2020. She got engaged to a different man named David Collins. She told the same fake pregnancy story and stole $650,000. The third time was in 2021 with a man named Marcus Whitmore. She tried the pregnancy scam one more time, but he figured out her lie. A warrant was now out for her arrest for fraud. The pregnancy she was faking with Michael was also a total lie. We learned she bought the ultrasound photo online from a website for $200. I asked him, "Does Michael know any of this?" The investigator replied, "Not right now." I took a deep, slow breath. If I exposed Alexis now, everyone would just feel sorry for Michael. He would appear to be a victim who was tricked by a criminal. Richard nodded his head in agreement. He told me, "You are learning things very quickly." We agreed to keep the information about Alexis secret. We would use it when it could cause the most possible damage. Over the next 8 weeks, I changed everything about myself. In the first week, I worked on healing my body and learning the business. I went to physical therapy for my shoulder and the scar. I learned to hold grace with one arm and read financial reports with the other. Richard taught me how to understand complex business documents. I sat through board meetings without speaking, only watching. In the second week, I started my new role as an executive. I joined a difficult business course with other senior executives. I found every single weakness inside of Sterling Industries, writing down everything in notebooks. I started asking smart questions that made everyone respect me. I gave my first presentation to the board all by myself. My transformation was moving fast. The third week was all about my public image. I bought an entirely new wardrobe from the best designers. My closet filled up with power suits and beautiful heels. I changed my soft brown hair to an eye-catching platinum blonde. A professional makeup artist taught me how to apply a powerful look, and a voice coach helped me fix my voice and my posture. You should enter a room as if you own it, my coach told me, because now you actually do. Week 4 was all about finding my own true strength. I started training in Krav Maga so I could defend myself. I promised myself that I would never be a victim ever again. Richard set up some intense negotiation training for me. The company lawyers taught me all the legal ways to completely ruin a person's life. I would stand in the mirror and practice my serious boardroom face until it felt natural. During the 5th and 6th weeks, we launched our first attack. Harrington Global began secretly buying all of Sterling Industries' debt from 15 different banks. We bought Madison's modeling agency using a separate shell company. We sent a team of auditors to look into the finances of Victoria's boutique. All of the evidence was then gathered for the tax agency. Week 7 was for setting the final part of the trap. I worked with my team to prepare my big presentation for the board. I made myself watch the security video of the attack, which we got from the Sterling house. The maid who had stolen my bracelet was now our secret informant. My assistant paid her $50,000 for the bracelet and for a secret video she had recorded. We started leaking anonymous tips about Madison to celebrity gossip websites. We also scheduled the official business meeting with Jonathan. By the 8th week, I was completely prepared. I practiced my speech over and over again in the mirror. My daughter Grace was now 2 months old, and she was healthy and happy with her nannies. I stood there confidently in my power suit, my blonde hair styled just right. My bright red lipstick was perfect. The woman I saw in the mirror was a complete stranger. I whispered quietly to my own reflection, "It is time to destroy them." The meeting was set for the 12th of April. They had no idea a storm was coming for them. On April 2nd, with only 10 days left until the meeting, Madison was still posting photos to her Instagram. She was on a vacation in Turks and Caicos that her parents had paid for. Her caption said, 26 and living my best life. So very blessed. All natural, no filter. She had 486,000 followers. The comments were all full of praise, saying how perfect she was. Madison really thought she was untouchable. I called her using my old phone number because I knew that she would answer it. She answered the phone laughing, and I could hear both Alexis and Victoria there with her. "Oh my God, you guys," she said. "The trash is actually calling me. I'm putting this on speakerphone. Hello, Emma? How is that gutter you are now living in? Did you and your baby manage to find a good homeless shelter yet?" I made my voice sound weak and shaky on purpose, giving the performance of a lifetime. "I just wanted to call and beg you to please drop the Child Protective Services case. Please, I miss my little Grace so much." The truth was that the case had been thrown out a week ago because there was no evidence, but Madison was a cruel person, and she let me believe it was still happening. Oh, honey, I guess that Child Protective Services did not want your baby either. You are such a pathetic mother, but try to look on the bright side. Michael and Alexis are getting married next month. Maybe you can watch the wedding for the service entrance. All 3 of them started laughing loudly. I could hear Victoria yell, "Tell her that we do not even remember she exists anymore." Then Alexis added, "And tell her Michael said that the last 3 years with her were the worst of his life." Their laughter just got louder. "You need to understand something, Emma. You have always been a nobody. You will always be a nobody." But this was a funny phone call. Goodbye. She hung up the phone, and the sound of them laughing echoed in my head. I was sitting in the chief executive office at Harrington Global. The call was on speakerphone, so Richard and Crawford heard everything. I kept my face perfectly still, showing no emotion. Richard spoke first. "Was that the confirmation you needed?" I nodded once. "Yes? It is time to leak the Madison file." At 6 in the morning, on April 3rd, a website called Elite Secrets published a shocking article. Its headline was, "Influencer Madison Sterling: The Lies Behind the Lifestyle." The story was a brutal takedown, with evidence for every claim. It showed her real driver's license, which proved she was 32, not 26. It included her medical records, which listed all of her plastic surgeries. Photos revealed what she looked like before her supposed natural transformation. Bank statements proved her parents paid for 70% of her life. The article even had messages showing her lying to brands about her age. The story went viral in under 2 hours. The hashtag Madison Sterling Exposed started trending worldwide. People began inspecting her photos, looking for signs of surgery. Influencers made videos with titles like Madison Sterling Fooled Us All. Very soon, her brand deals started to disappear. Sephora ended her contract because of false representation. Fashion Nova announced, "We demand honesty from our influencers. Your contract is terminated." Flat Tummy Tea said their partnership was over, effective immediately. 12 other brands dropped her in just 4 hours. At 9 that morning, she got an email from Prestige Modeling Agency. It was short and cold. "Dear Madison, we are ending your contract for hiding cosmetic surgery and lying about your age. Return all company items by the end of today." Madison had no idea that I was the new owner of the agency. At 11, she went live on Instagram, crying her eyes out. "This is not true," she sobbed. "I am 26. I have never had surgery. These are all lies. Someone is trying to ruin my life." The comments started pouring in. "We saw the license, honey. Give it a rest." Another person wrote, "You are a complete fraud. Unfollowing you now." 47,000 people watched her public meltdown. Her follower count started dropping fast. It went from 486,000 to 450,000, then 420,000, and kept falling to 380,000. Madison cried into her phone, pleading, "I do not know who is doing this to me. Please just make them stop." Victoria called her. "You have to get off this live video right now. You are only making things worse." Madison screamed back, "Mom, they leaked everything. My private medical files. How is that even legal?" Her mother's voice was like ice. "I do not care about any of that. You need to go and fix this mess right now." In just 1 week, Madison's followers fell to 180,000. She lost all her sponsors, her agency, and her reputation. In desperation, she called Victoria. "Can you get Dad to stop this?" Victoria's reply was cold. "Your father has much bigger problems to handle." Sterling Industries was beginning to fall apart, just as I had planned. I watched the chaos with Richard next to me. The first part of my plan was complete. Madison was no longer an issue. She had called me a nobody and filmed my humiliation for fun. Now, it was her turn to suffer. Richard looked over at me. "So, who is the next target on your list?" I answered him, "Alexis. After I deal with her, Victoria and Jonathan will get their turn in the boardroom." On April 5th, Michael and Alexis were at the family mansion, pretending to be a happy couple. Their wedding was scheduled for May, and Alexis's belly was getting bigger every day. The fake pregnancy stomach she wore was a top-of-the-line model and looked completely real. Victoria was busy planning the perfect wedding, while Jonathan was secretly panicking about the company's money problems. That afternoon, a FedEx package arrived with no return address. Michael took it to his study to open it. Inside, he found a thick folder about a woman named Alexandra Marie Thompson. It detailed her entire criminal history, with pictures from 3 different arrests and solid proof of her fake pregnancies. The file contained the very same ultrasound photo she had shown him. With digital proof, she bought it online. It also included bank records showing she had conned other men out of $650,000. A small note sat on top of the papers. It said, "Michael, you treated me like dirt for 3 years. Now it is your turn to feel like a fool. I suggest you check her stomach. It is fake. You're welcome, a friend." Pure rage burned through Michael. He stormed into the bedroom where Alexis was getting dressed. He threw the folder at her and yelled, "Who are you?" Alexis started to stutter. "Honey, just wait. I can explain everything." He screamed back, "Your name is not even Alexis. You are a professional con artist." She tried to run, but he grabbed her arm. Her sleeve caught on a dresser, and the prosthetic belly fell from beneath her dress. It was made of expensive silicone, but it was clearly not real. It hit the hardwood floor with a soft, heavy thud. Michael just stared at it, his face a mask of total shock. "Get out of my house right now," he said, his voice quiet but full of danger. Just then, Victoria and Jonathan ran in after hearing all the yelling. They saw the documents scattered on the floor. Victoria gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Jonathan bent down and picked up one of the papers. "Oh, my word," he whispered. "She is wanted by the police in California." Alexis reached for her purse, but Jonathan blocked her path. "You are not going anywhere," he said firmly. "I am calling the authorities." At exactly 11 in the morning, 2 police officers arrived at the mansion. They had an active warrant from California that had just been approved. As they put Alexis in handcuffs, she started screaming, "This is a setup. Someone sent you that folder. Someone is coming for this family." Victoria stood frozen. Who could possibly know about what happened to Madison? She wondered out loud. First her, and now Alexis. Someone is targeting us. Jonathan tried to calm her down. "Victoria, do not be so dramatic. It is just a coincidence." But he did not look very convinced himself. That evening, Michael sat alone in his dark study with a drink. His whole life was falling apart. His 3-year marriage had been a complete lie, a joke his friends still laughed about. He had a daughter with Emma, a child he had walked away from. He had just discovered Alexis was a professional criminal. On top of it all, his family's company was about to go under. It felt like everything he touched turned to disaster. He pulled out his phone and looked for my old number, but it was disconnected. For a moment, he actually thought about calling me to apologize. Just then, Victoria walked into the room. "Do not you even think about it," she said with a harsh tone. He answered quietly, "Maybe we were wrong about her and the baby. Grace. She is my daughter, and Dati. Victoria slapped him hard across the face. "That girl means nothing to us. She does not matter. You need to focus on what is important right now, which is saving this family's business." Michael stared at his mother, a sick feeling in his stomach. "What if this is all happening because of how we treated Emma?" Victoria just laughed a cruel laugh. "Emma? That worthless little nobody? She is probably long gone. She does not have the money or the brains to go up against a family like ours. I watched the entire scene through a hidden camera, hearing every single word. My face was cold with fury. On April 6th, I watched as the Sterling family continued to tear itself apart. Richard said to me, "The Sterlings are destroying themselves. Michael and Alexis are done. Madison's career is over, and Victoria is terrified. You can end this now. You could take Grace, go to Paris, and be happy. They have paid for what they did." I looked down at my daughter, Grace, who was 2.5 months old and smiling up at me. "Maybe you are right," I said softly. "Maybe this whole revenge plot is not worth it. They are already ruining their own lives. All I ever wanted was a peaceful life. I wanted to raise Grace far away from all of this anger. I had even started to plan our move to London, where Harrington Global had its European office. I could run my company from anywhere, far from their toxic world. I would never see the Sterlings again, and could simply let them drown in their own mess. For a short time, I really thought about letting it all go, but then came April 8th. A large yellow envelope arrived at the Harrington Global headquarters. Inside were legal papers. The Sterling family was suing me, Emma Morgan, for immediate emergency custody of my daughter. They claimed that I had abandoned Grace. They had fake statements from people they paid off, all saying I was mentally unstable. They even included a forged psychiatric report from Dr. Rothman. They argued that the Sterling family could offer a stable, 2-parent home. They claimed Michael was a changed man who wanted to make up for his mistakes. They insisted that a child belonged in a rich, secure home, not with a single mother. An emergency hearing was set for April 11th, just 3 days from now. The judge who was assigned to the case was the Honorable Robert Whitmore from the Connecticut Family Court. Richard's face was full of concern. "Emma, this is a very bad sign," he said. "Judge Whitmore is from an old, wealthy Connecticut family. He plays golf with Jonathan Sterling and is known for siding with what he calls traditional families." I argued with him, "But I have my own proof. I have all the records of the assault and of their cruel treatment of me." Richard just shook his head with a sad look on his face. "They are going to say that you got the evidence illegally. If the judge throws it out, it will just be your story against their story. And inside of a Connecticut family court, they will always win." The terrible truth of his words hit me like a punch. I may have $2.3 billion, but I could still lose my own daughter. Money is not what matters most in family court, especially when the judge is already on their side. My legal team, made of 5 of the best lawyers in the entire country, met to create a plan. One of them said, "We need to get Dr. Morrison to testify about the abuse that took place at the hospital." Richard said, "She is very scared. If she testifies, she will be going against the hospital that gets millions in donations from the Sterlings." Another lawyer then asked, "What about Rebecca Martinez?" Richard sighed a long, heavy breath. "The nurse's testimony is only considered hearsay. She did not actually see the attack happen," another lawyer said. "And the security video from the mansion? It was obtained illegally. The court is never going to admit it as evidence." I looked at their faces as my final hope began to disappear. "So is there nothing at all we can use?" The lead lawyer was very direct. "We only have your word, but they will make you look like a bitter ex-daughter-in-law. We also know Judge Whitmore is not on our side." On April 11th, we showed up at the Connecticut Family Court. I walked in with my small group of lawyers. Across from us, the entire Sterling family was sitting with their 8 lawyers. Their main lawyer stood up to speak. "Your Honor, this is all about a child's well-being. Grace Sterling has a family that loves her. Her father, Michael, has made some mistakes, as we all do, but he is dedicated to being the father that she needs. Her grandparents, Victoria and Jonathan, are pillars of our community. They can provide her with a wonderful life." He went on, "The mother, Emma Morgan, is showing signs of very unstable behavior. She abandoned her child with strangers so she could attend business meetings and check into luxury hotels. They were twisting my work at Harrington Global into something vile." My own lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, this is a desperate attempt by an abusive family to cause my client more pain. Emma Morgan was assaulted and then left for dead with her newborn baby in a snowstorm." The other attorney yelled, "Objection! There is not one shred of evidence of an assault." The judge's ruling was immediate. "Objection sustained. Counselor, you need to stick to the facts that we know." Next, they had Victoria take the witness stand. She was wearing a Chanel suit with pearls and looked just like a perfect grandmother. Her face was a perfect picture of fake worry. "Your Honor," she began, her voice soft and believable, "I loved Emma just like she was my very own daughter. We welcomed her into our home, even with her simple upbringing. We did all that we could to help her fit in. We were just so happy when she finally had the baby. But then Emma became paranoid, accusing us of horrible things. She continued her web of lies. She thought we wanted to take Grace from her. We were only trying to help. Then she said, she left our house on her own in the middle of the night. We were sick with worry for her. Now, we have no idea where she is living or what she is doing. Michael just wants to be a father to his little girl." My lawyer started his questions. "Mrs. Sterling, you say Emma left willingly. Can you tell me why a woman healing from surgery would go into a blizzard with her baby?" Victoria's reply was slick. "I am not sure. As I said, her mind was not clear." He kept pressing. "Did you or your family ever hurt Emma Morgan?" "Never," she said, looking right at him. "That is a dreadful accusation." "What about this footage?" my lawyer asked, trying to show the video from Madison's account. "Objection!" the Sterling's lawyer shouted. "That video was recorded without permission and is obviously fake." The judge made his decision instantly. "Objection sustained. I will not allow any illegally obtained evidence in my court." After that, it was Madison's turn on the stand. She had clearly been coached and was quieter than her usual self. "Emma just never seemed to belong in our family," she said softly. "She was jealous of me and our way of life. The night she ran away, she was yelling at my mother and making all kinds of threats. We tried to get her to calm down, but she just ran out into the storm. I was scared for the baby. That is why I recorded it, to prove to Child Services she was unstable." Then, Michael gave the performance of a lifetime. "Your Honor," he said, his voice trembling with false emotion, "I made huge mistakes. I was a bad husband. I ignored Emma. I am so sorry. But I love my daughter. I want to be her dad. I am getting help now, working to be a better man. My family can give her stability, a good home, and financial safety. He looked straight at me. A future with Emma? I do not even have her address. How can she possibly provide for Grace? Then it was my turn to tell my side. I told them absolutely everything. I told the court about the bet, the constant emotional torment, the attack at the hospital, and how they left me in the snow. When their lawyer questioned me, he completely tore me to shreds. Miss Morgan, you claim there was abuse, but you have zero proof. There are no police files, no hospital records from this so-called assault, and no witnesses other than your friends, who are obviously on your side. Is it not true that you are just a bitter ex-wife trying to stop a loving father from seeing his child? I answered, No. They pushed me down the stairs. I have a video of it. He jumped on that right away. A video you got by illegally hacking into their home security? My lawyer shouted, Objection, but the judge fired back. Overruled. Please answer the question, Miss Morgan. I hesitated. I and an associate of mine found it for me. So you are admitting it was obtained illegally? Judge Whitmore spoke before giving his final decision. He said, This is a truly difficult case. My first job is to protect the child. And while I believe Miss Morgan is a caring mother, the judge said that my lack of solid evidence was a serious issue. By contrast, the Sterling family had shown they had the money, a stable house, and a true desire to raise Grace. Because of this, he gave temporary custody to Michael Sterling and his family. A full 30-day evaluation would come next. He allowed me supervised visits, only twice a week. My whole world came crashing down at that moment. No, oh please, no, do not do this. They brought Grace in from a room next door. I held her as tightly as I could, sobbing uncontrollably. No, please do not take my baby away from me. Please. A social worker carefully took Grace from my arms. Victoria took my daughter's hand, a satisfied smile on her face. Grace cried out for me, reaching her little arms back. I collapsed onto the floor, completely shattered. This felt worse than being left to die in a snowstorm. This time, I had money and influence. I had all the advantages, and I still lost. The justice system let me down. On the courthouse steps, cameras flashed as reporters mobbed us. Victoria led Grace to the Sterling's car, with Madison following right behind. Michael and his family looked like they had won a great victory and did not even look at me once. That night, I sat all alone in the huge Harrington Global penthouse, looking at Grace's empty crib. I finally made the call to Richard. I told him I played by all their rules, I did everything the proper way, and they still came out on top. They have my daughter. He tried to say something comforting, suggesting we could file an appeal and keep fighting in court, but something deep inside me had broken. My voice was no longer begging. It was now as cold as ice. I told him there was no more us, and no more following their rules. I was finished with their little game. You once told me I was in charge of the whole board, I said. Well, now I am going to flip that board upside down. I need you to set up the contract meeting. I want every last one of them in that room by April 12th. Richard sounded hesitant. That is tomorrow, he said. Emma, are you really sure about this? My reply came instantly. They were the ones who started a war. I am going to bring them total ruin. From midnight until 6 in the morning, Richard and I got to work. I called Dr. Morrison and told her I needed her to speak out. I gave her my word I would keep her safe. Through her tears, she told me how scared she was. I said I was scared too, but we had to end this. Crawford, my investigator, located Madison's Instagram live video from the hospital. She had never deleted it. The video was still on Instagram's main computers, and we had a legal right to get it. My lawyers filed an emergency request with the new proof right away. I did not get any sleep. Instead, I got ready for battle. I chose a sharp white Tom Ford suit and had my platinum hair styled just right. I applied a bold red lipstick and stared at myself in the mirror. It is time to end this, I told my reflection. It was April 12th at 2 in the afternoon. The meeting was scheduled at the Harrington Global Building on the 52nd floor in Midtown Manhattan. The Sterling family pulled up in a Lexus. Their normal Mercedes was gone, taken back and replaced with a much older model. They all looked smaller somehow. Jonathan's suit was too big for him, showing how much weight he had lost from the stress. Victoria's jewelry was clearly fake, a cheap imitation of the real diamonds she used to wear. She must have sold the good ones to pay the rent. Madison was not wearing any designer labels. Her hair was a mess, and she looked exhausted. Michael looked hungover and beaten, but they were all trying to act strong. Their final hope was a $75 million contract. Inside the elevator, Victoria spoke quietly to her family. "Remember who you are. We are Sterlings. Our family has a legacy, and they will show us the respect we deserve." She then told Jonathan that she would do all of the talking. "We have to get this deal, or we have nothing left," she said. Madison, looking down at her phone, muttered, "At least all the drama with Emma is finished. The judge gave us grace." Michael just stared at the elevator floor and said nothing at all. The doors opened without a sound on the 52nd floor. The view was breathtaking, with glass walls that showed the entire Manhattan skyline. The office was filled with modern art, a quiet display of incredible wealth. A receptionist led them into a conference room with glass walls that overlooked Central Park. A huge table, big enough for 20 people, filled the room. At the very end of it, the chief executive officer's chair was turned around, facing the city. 8 board members in expensive suits were already seated. Security guards stood at the doors. A giant screen was on the wall behind the main chair. The Sterlings sat down across from the empty head of the table. Jonathan nervously cleared his throat and started, "We would like to express our thanks for this meeting." My voice cut through the air, making him stop immediately. "Hello, Jonathan." The big chair spun around slowly, and there I was. I was the one sitting in it. I looked commanding, with my platinum blonde hair, a spotless white Tom Ford suit, red Louis Vuitton heels, and my grandfather's family ring. My red lipstick was perfect, and my face was like stone. "Hello, Victoria, Madison, and Michael," I said. Their faces changed, as if time had slowed down. The color vanished from Jonathan's face as he fell back into his chair. Victoria actually fainted. Madison grabbed her, her eyes wide with complete shock as she stared at me. Madison's jaw dropped, her mind unable to process what she was seeing. Her phone fell from her hand, making a loud clatter on the floor. Michael was completely frozen, his eyes as wide as they could get. He could not even make a sound. The security guards moved to block the doors. Nobody was leaving. Jonathan finally managed to speak. "What is this?" he stammered. "Is this some awful prank?" I stood up and paced slowly around the long table. My voice was low, but it had a menacing edge. "Have a seat. We are here to talk about a $75 million deal." Victoria started screaming. "This is crazy. This can't be real. You are nothing." I stopped walking and stared at her. "I am Emma Catherine Harrington, chairwoman and CEO of Harrington Global Industries. I inherited everything from my grandfather, William Harrington, a fortune of $2.3 billion. I pointed to William's portrait on the wall. "And you are all here because you applied for a contract with my company." Michael finally found his voice. "That is impossible," he said. "How could you be?" I gave a small, cold smile. "You wonder how I got here? Let me tell you a story." With a remote, I lit up the screen behind me. It displayed security footage from February 15th at 3 o'clock in the morning, showing the moment I was thrown down the stairs at the Sterling home. The timestamp was clear at the bottom of the screen. Victoria screamed, "Turn it off." I replied, "No, you will sit there and watch." The footage continued, showing it all. It showed Madison's live stream, me being dragged on the marble, the streak of blood, and Victoria shouting at me to kneel. It showed security taking Grace from me before I was pushed down the steps into the snow, leaving a red trail behind. The doors slammed, the room fell silent. Even my board members looked shocked. I broke the quiet. "February 15th at 3 in the morning? You shoved me down those stairs. Back then I was just as you said, a nobody with no power or money." A death certificate for William James Harrington appeared on the screen. He died on February 15th at 7 in the morning, just 4 hours later. My grandfather had a heart attack right after he saw that video. His will made me his sole heir, effective at the time of his death. I let the information sink in. So now you understand. At 3 in the morning, when you threw me out, I was penniless. But by 7, I was about to become a billionaire. You just did not know it yet. Victoria whispered. Oh, good heavens, I continued. It makes for a great headline, does it not? Family kicks out a new billionaire heiress in a blizzard, unaware of her fortune. Now, let us discuss your problems. The screen showed Jonathan Sterling's finances, all in red ink. Sterling Industries is in debt for $83 million, or it was. 3 weeks ago, I bought $75 million of that debt from your creditors for a good price. I am collecting on that debt now. You have 48 hours to pay in full, or I take everything. Jonathan's jaw hung open, but he was speechless. And one more thing, I added. The FBI logo flashed on the screen, then emails proving Jonathan stole from the company pension fund. The Federal Bureau of Investigation received these files at 9 this morning. Expect formal charges before the week is over. Pictures of Victoria Sterling's stores appeared. Sterling-style boutiques. I now own the buildings for all 5 of your shops. Your leases are canceled. Starting right now, the locks will be changed today at 5 o'clock. You also owe $480,000 in back rent. I am suing you for that amount, plus damages. And the last thing, the Internal Revenue Service logo filled the screen. The IRS learned about $2.3 million in tax fraud yesterday. Prepare for an audit. A picture of Madison with my mother's necklace was next. I am also suing you for $5 million for the theft of my mother's jewelry. Victoria gasped, her hand on her heart. The next slide was all about Madison Sterling, showing photos of her recent public disgrace. Your modeling career is over, I stated. Your online influence is gone. But this next part is my favorite. A video started playing. It was Madison's live stream from the hospital, the full version where she broadcasted my injuries to everyone. 500,000 people saw that. It is now evidence that can be used in court. The Greenwich police got the video this morning. Assault charges are now officially filed. Madison started to cry uncontrollably. Now for Michael Sterling. The college bet video played on the large screen. Every cruel word, every laugh, and all the awful things he said about me were there for everyone to see. This video goes to every major news station tonight at 6 o'clock. The FBI also knows about the $3.8 million you stole from Sterling Industries. But this last part will hurt you the most. The final slide was about the emergency custody hearing for Grace. New video played. It was from Dr. Morrison's phone at the hospital, with clear audio of the threats. Madison's live stream played again, now a public court document. Then came sworn statements from 3 former Sterling employees, whom I paid to come forward. An emergency request was filed with the family court this morning. A judge in Connecticut Family Court was looking at my case, and our hearing was set for tomorrow. Michael yelled and tried to lunge at me over the huge table. You will never see Grace again, he shouted. You monster! You ruined us so! Guards stopped him, holding him on the ground. I did not move a muscle. While Michael struggled, he screamed, You destroyed my life! We gave you everything. I leaned toward him, my voice a quiet whisper just for him. You gave me nothing. Our marriage was fake, a bet for you and your friends. For 3 years, you let your family abuse me. You abandoned our daughter when she was 3 days old. I did not destroy your life, Michael. You did. Victoria fell to her knees, begging. Please, we can make this right. We will give you whatever you want. I am sorry. I looked down at her. You have nothing I want. I moved nearer, looking into her eyes. You said I was worthless. You said I was nothing. You said I should be left in the snow. But worthless people do not create a $2.3 billion corporation. Worthless people do not topple entire dynasties. You did not throw out garbage, Victoria, I said, stepping closer still. You threw out a queen. Jonathan, looking defeated, made a final plea. The contract, please? We need that contract. I slowly shook my head. There is no contract. There never was. This was never about business. This was about showing you who you tried to ruin and who is ruining you. I picked up the remote. And there is one final surprise. The large screen showed a live YouTube stream. A counter showed 4.2 million viewers. This entire meeting was broadcast live. 4.2 million people just heard everything we said. The chat was flying by. She is an absolute queen. They are getting what is coming to them. Best revenge ever. Emma Harrington is a legend. Madison shrieked in terror. You cannot do this. It is illegal. We did not consent to be filmed. Perhaps you should have read the agreement you signed when you arrived, I said calmly. Clause 47 allows for media use for business. I handed Victoria the papers she had signed without looking. You never read it, did you? I learned that from you. Always check the fine print. This was a painful memory of them making me sign divorce papers in my hospital bed. Security then removed them from the room, and they were rough. Victoria was hauled out, shouting, You will pay for this. We will sue you. I just replied, With what funds? You have nothing left. Farewell, Victoria. Madison was a mess, crying hard. I am so sorry. Please forgive me. I looked right at her. You recorded my worst moment for entertainment. You wanted to make me a meme. Well, congratulations. Now you are the one going viral. Michael looked at me one last time. Emma, please. For Grace. She is my daughter. No, I said firmly. She is my daughter. You were just the biological father who left. You will not see her again. Guards dragged him from the room. Jonathan left in total silence, a completely broken man. His family's fortune was wiped out. I stood alone in the vast room, looking at the New York City skyline. My colleague Richard appeared. The stream is still going. 5.8 million viewers and climbing. I only nodded. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Dr. Morrison. We have an emergency custody hearing tomorrow. We will win for sure. Grace is finally coming home. A real smile crossed my face for the first time in so long. Outside the building, the Sterling family walked into chaos. 50 reporters were waiting. The camera flashes were blinding as they screamed questions. Did you leave a baby in the snow? Was your marriage just a bet? Are you facing criminal charges? Then, agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation approached. Jonathan Sterling, Michael Sterling, you are under arrest for fraud and embezzlement. They were handcuffed as agents read them their rights. The press crowded Victoria and Madison. Though they were not handcuffed, Madison's phone buzzed with endless hate messages. Victoria tried to hide her face from the cameras. Online, our story spread like wildfire worldwide. The #1 trend was Sterling Family Exposed. My name, Emma Harrington, was second, and Billion-Dollar Revenge was third. The custody hearing happened the next day. With the doctor's words, the hospital video, and Madison's own stream, the judge ruled fast. I got full and sole custody. The Sterlings were denied any visitation rights while facing criminal charges. When they finally put Grace in my arms, I held her close and cried. She was safe. She was finally safe. 6 months later, on October 15th, I was on the cover of Forbes magazine. The headline read, Emma Harrington, the CEO from nothing. Harrington Global's stock rose by 40%, and we entered 3 new markets. I sat in my office, watching my 8-month-old daughter, Grace, play on her mat. Rebecca entered and said, You actually did it. I smiled at her. No, we did this together. The dark chapter of the Sterling family was closed. Jonathan was found guilty and got a 12-year sentence in federal prison. Victoria got house arrest, lost all her money, and now works retail to pay massive tax debts from a tiny apartment. Madison avoided jail, but her career was ruined. She now works in a call center, and her Instagram followers fell to just 12,000, a 97% loss. Michael took a plea deal for a 7-year prison sentence. He also gave up all parental rights to Grace. As for Alexis, whose real name was Alexandra Thompson, she was convicted of fraud in California and got 15 years. People sometimes ask if I regret it, or if justice was worth the fight. I just look over at Grace, so happy and healthy, growing up feeling completely safe and loved. I think of the $50 million I donated to support women's shelters and services for survivors. I remember all the women who shared their stories of survival and found their own inner power. The video of what happened to me has been viewed 127 million times. The Sterling family name is now a global lesson in justice. Their horrible deeds were shown to the whole world. So, was it all worth it? Every single second was worth it. Let me tell you something important. I learned a lesson I needed when I was lying in the snow. Feeling worthless. Pain does not have to destroy you. If you refuse to quit, pain can shape you into something stronger than a diamond, something that cannot be broken. When they threw me down those stairs, I was bleeding and broken. Sure, I was nothing, but I was so wrong. I was not nothing. I was just someone who had not yet found her strength. For weeks, the media attention from the live stream was crazy. I could not go out without being recognized. Some people treated me like a hero. Others said I was just being mean, that my actions were wrong, and I should have just moved on. To those people, I ask a simple question. What would you have done? Would you have forgiven them for leaving your baby daughter to freeze in a snowstorm? Would you have let it go after they used a broken legal system to take your child? Would you have shown any mercy to people who showed you absolutely none? I did not think so. There is a big difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is about hurting someone who hurt you. Justice is making sure they can never hurt anyone again. I was fighting for justice. The Sterling family had a long history of cruelty that did not begin with me. After my story was public, 7 other women came forward to talk about what the Sterlings did to them. These were all women Michael had dated before me. Women at Sterling Industries were hurt and then paid to stay silent. Every one of them thanked me for being brave enough to talk about their secret pain. At that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. I started the Harrington Foundation for Abuse Survivors, launching it with $50 million. We give legal help, therapy, safe housing, and job skills for people escaping abuse. In only 6 months, we have already helped more than 2,000 people. My daughter Grace will grow up knowing that if someone tries to break you, you have 2 options. You can believe what they say, or you can prove to them that they are incredibly wrong. I chose to prove them wrong. A year later, on April 12th, the anniversary of our boardroom fight, I held a press conference. The room was packed with reporters, and cameras flashed everywhere. I told them, 1 year ago, I faced the people who tormented me for 3 years, the people who left my baby in a blizzard and tried to steal my daughter. Today, I am here as a chief executive officer, a mother, and a woman who did not let cruelty win. People ask if I have regrets or if getting justice was worth it. Let me be clear. I never wanted revenge. I wanted accountability. The Sterling family did not lose their money because I wanted payback. They lost it all because they broke the law. Jonathan Sterling stole from his employees' retirement funds. Victoria Sterling did not pay millions of dollars in taxes. Michael Sterling committed massive financial fraud. And Madison Sterling attacked me on a live stream for 500,000 people to see. I did not destroy them. They destroyed themselves. I just made sure the world was watching. For anyone listening who feels lost in a storm, who is facing total despair, please listen. You are not worthless. You are not invisible. You are not the awful thing someone called you to break you. You have power. You have value. You are enough. Stand up. Brush yourself off. And show the world exactly who you are. The room filled with applause. After the conference, I returned to my penthouse. My daughter Grace was with her nanny, playing with blocks. When she saw me, her face lit up, and she held her arms out for me. I picked her up and hugged her, taking in her sweet baby smell. I whispered, "You know what, my sweet girl? Your mommy was almost broken, but she got up again." One day, I will tell you this story. I will teach you that no matter what, you are the only one who can define you. Grace just giggled and twisted her little hand in my hair. I laughed, and for the first time in a very long time, it was a real happy laugh. Rebecca visited later that night. We sat on my balcony, drinking wine and looking at the amazing Manhattan skyline. She asked quietly, Do you ever think about that night, the one in the snow? Every single day, I admitted, but not how you think. I do not remember the pain anymore. For me, that was the moment that changed my whole life. It was when I chose to be a survivor, not a victim. You are amazing, you know, she said. I just shook my head. I am not special. I am just a woman who refused to be beaten. That, she said with a smile, is exactly what makes you special. We sat there, in a comfortable quiet, watching the city lights start to glow. So, what comes next for you? Rebecca asked. I thought about it for a moment. I am not sure. I will keep growing the business, helping people with the foundation, and raising Grace to be a strong, good person. Maybe that is enough. That is more than enough, she said. You have already changed the world for a lot of people, Flagella. Hours after Rebecca left, I found myself in Grace's nursery, quietly watching her sleep. She was the picture of peace, a perfect vision of innocence and goodness. I thought about my mother, Catherine, who escaped the grip of her own demanding father. She was absolutely determined to build a life on her own terms. I recalled her working 3 different jobs to provide for me, her pride a wall that never let her ask for help, no matter how hard it got. My thoughts turned to my grandfather, William. He watched me endure 2 long years of misery. His desire to help was tangled in the complex plans of his lawyers. It must have torn him apart to see a person he loved hurting so badly. Ultimately, their stubborn pride became a wall between them. It was a fortress that separated their love from their inability to bend. I refused to ever make that same mistake. I made a quiet promise to my daughter. You will always feel, deep in your soul, just how much you are loved. You will grow up knowing that asking for help shows great strength, not weakness. You will learn to never tolerate cruelty from anybody, regardless of who they are. And if someone dares to make you feel insignificant, you will remember this. They left your mother in the cold, but she returned a queen. Grace stirred while she slept, her little hand closing into a tiny fist. A smile touched my lips as I leaned down to kiss her forehead. Tomorrow, I have a meeting with the board. My company, Harrington Global, will launch a new department next week. Its entire focus will be on ethical conduct and the well-being of our employees. And next month, my foundation is set to open 3 more shelters. Tonight, though, I was not a chief executive officer. I was just Emma, a mom watching over her child. I was a woman who survived something terrible and emerged much stronger. That simple victory felt like everything. Now 5 years have gone by. Today is Grace's very first day of kindergarten. She is in a purple dress she insisted on picking out herself. Her dark hair is tied in 2 ponytails that dance when she moves. Mommy, do you think the other kids will like me? She asked on the way to school. Oh, sweetie, they will absolutely love you. Just be your wonderful self. That is always enough. That's what you always say, she answered with a smile. Because it is exactly what I always mean. I saw her run towards the school building, full of courage and joy. My heart nearly burst with an overwhelming sense of pride. Harrington Global now has a value of $4.1 billion. Our work has grown to include green energy, responsible manufacturing, and affordable housing. Each choice I make comes from a single question. What world do I want to build for Grace? The Harrington Foundation has assisted more than 15,000 people in escaping abusive environments. We also created 3 documentary films to shine a light on domestic violence, and we won the fight for stronger laws that protect survivors in the courtroom. The Sterling family feels like a bad dream from long ago. Jonathan got out of prison last month, having served his full time. He is now 67 and has a job at a local hardware store. I was told he even applied for a position at my company once. His application was rejected. Victoria is 73. She still lives in that house and works a retail job. She will spend the remainder of her life paying off her government debts. Madison is now 42, a fact I am sure she would hate for me to mention. She pulls the late shift at a diner that never closes. There is no social media, no audience, and certainly no fame for her now. She has a perfectly ordinary life, which I know is the greatest punishment she could imagine. Michael was let out of prison 2 months ago. He did 5 years out of a 7-year sentence. He made one attempt to contact me, asking if he could see his daughter. My attorney promptly sent a letter ordering him to cease all contact. He gave up every single one of his parental rights. There is no legal tie between him and Grace. I have been told he manages a warehouse in New Jersey and is now engaged. For his fiance's sake, I truly hope he has changed, but I am not convinced. Alexis remains in prison, with another 7 years left on her sentence. And as for my own life, I am now engaged to be married. His name is David Collins. He is a wonderful man and a civil rights lawyer. We first met at a fundraising event for my foundation. He knows everything I have been through, and he loves me for the person I am today. And what matters most of all, he loves Grace like she is his own daughter. After telling him everything about the Sterling family, he looked at me and said, "When I see you, I do not see a victim or a survivor. I see a woman who refused to let cruelty break her. I see pure strength, and I knew my heart was safe. Our wedding is planned for the spring. It will be a small ceremony, just for our closest friends and family." Grace is so excited to be the flower girl and has already picked her dress. The snow still finds me in my dreams sometimes. I dream of the bitter cold, of Grace's fading cries, and the certainty we were going to die. But I no longer wake up in fear. I just walk to Grace's room to watch her sleep, reminding myself that we survived. We did not just get through it, we built a beautiful life. And last week, a young woman visited my office after hearing about me through our foundation. Her in-laws had betrayed her and left her with nothing, just like they did to me. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I read your story. When I saw what you built, I thought that maybe I could do it too." I took her hand and told her, "You absolutely can, and you will not have to do it alone." We gave her a safe place to stay in one of our shelters and found her a lawyer. We also set up counseling and helped her contact the police. 2 months later, she sent me a photograph of herself and her 2 children smiling outside their new home. Her note read, "We are finally free. Thank you for showing me it could be done." That is the true reason for everything I did. It was never simply for revenge. It was for her. And moments like that, it was for anyone who needed to know you can be left in the snow and still rise to build a kingdom. Today is April 12th, the anniversary of that final meeting in the boardroom. I always try to do something significant on this day. This year, I am speaking at a TEDx conference about healing, power, and justice. I am on a stage looking at 5,000 people. I begin my speech. When they abandoned me in the snow, I truly believed my life was finished. I felt completely worthless. Part of me thought I had earned it. I was wrong on every count. Hardship does not have to be your end. Sometimes, if you fight back with everything you have, pain will remake you into someone stronger than you ever thought possible. There is nothing special about me. I have no secret power. I am just a woman who refused to be broken. For every person listening who is stuck in their own storm. Neck, in a difficult season of your life, this is not where your story ends. This is where it begins. Get up, brush off the snow, and show the world your true self. Because worthless people do not build empires. Worthless people do not change the world. Worthless people do not inspire thousands to find their own strength. You are not worthless. You are not a nobody. You have more power than you realize. One day you will look back on this time and know it was the moment you became unstoppable. The crowd gets to their feet, clapping for 3 solid minutes. Afterward, hundreds wait in line to share their own survival stories with me, or just to say thank you. They wanted me to know they were rising up too. That night, I am home with Grace and David, making a simple pasta, which is Grace's favorite meal. "Mommy, why did so many people want to talk to you?" Grace asks, glancing up from the sauce she is helping to stir. I tell her, "Because my story helps them see something very important about themselves." She asks, "What's that?" It reminds them that they get to decide who they become, no matter what has happened to them. "Like how you decided to become a queen?" I have to laugh at her innocent question. Yes, something just like that, my love. David walks over and kisses my temple. The queen who returned from the snow, he says softly. I smile at him and reply, I like the way that sounds. Later that evening, after Grace is in bed, David and I sit on the balcony, the same way my friend Rebecca and I used to do. Do you ever have any regrets? He asks. About sharing your story so publicly? The live video, the news reports, all of it. I pause for a moment before I answer him. No, I really do not, I say. It was never only about my own story. It was for every person who was ever made to feel like they were nothing, for everyone who was ever thrown away. I needed them to see that you can come back from that. You can do more than just survive. You can truly live. He says to me, you have changed so many lives. I just gently shake my head. They were the ones who changed their own lives. I only showed them that it could be done. We sit in silence for a while, holding hands and watching the city lights. I think of the Emma I was 5 years ago, so broken and cold, so certain she was dying in the snow. If I could go back in time to talk to her, I would tell her, just hold on. Help is on its way. In 5 years, you will be happy. Genuinely and totally happy. Grace will be a healthy, vibrant little girl. You will be with an amazing man who loves you deeply. You will have helped thousands of people find safety. And the Sterling family will seem like a bad dream from long ago. The winter does not last forever. Your spring is coming. My phone buzzes on the table. It is a new alert from my foundation. It is another woman who is reaching out, someone else who is ready to leave her personal storm behind. I send her a message right back. I connect her with our support staff, and I assure her that she is not by herself anymore. Because that is the entire point. It was never about getting even. It was not even about getting justice. It was about making certain no one else has to lie in the snow, shattered and alone, believing they are not worth saving. It was about proving to the world that you can be discarded like trash and still build a legacy. If my journey of pain and healing can inspire even one person to keep fighting, then every tear I shed was worth it. As I look out at the skyline of New York City, I can see the Harrington Global Building. It stands there as my grandfather's legacy, a quiet protector watching over the city I now call home. I can almost imagine my grandfather, William, looking down at me from somewhere above. I deeply hope that he would be proud. I think about my mother, Catherine, who taught me that true strength means leaving behind what hurts you. I picture my dear Grace sleeping peacefully in her room, so surrounded by love that she will never have to question her own worth. And finally, my thoughts turn to me. Emma Catherine Morgan Harrington. I started as the invisible girl no one ever saw, but I became the woman who gained everything that truly matters. They left me in a blizzard with absolutely nothing. They had no idea I was the hidden heir to a billion-dollar fortune. They never thought I would make it through the night. They could not have possibly imagined I would return more powerful than before. But their greatest error was not understanding that when you break a person, you can sometimes forge them into something that is unbreakable. I am not a victim. I am much more than a survivor. I am a woman who was shattered into pieces and decided to rebuild herself. I am a mother who will teach her daughter that her value comes from the inside. I am the chief executive officer of a worldwide company founded on integrity and compassion. I am a philanthropist who uses my past pain to help lift others. I am the queen who came back from the winter. So, if you are listening to me right now, if you are feeling lost in your own storm, if you have ever been made to feel insignificant, I need you to understand this. You are not insignificant. You matter. There's an incredible power waiting to be unlocked inside of you. You are made for wonderful things, and your moment is coming. Be proud of who you are. The snow will always melt. Your new season is just ahead. If this story resonated with you, if it helped you remember your own power, please click the like button and send it to someone who needs this message. In the comments, share a time when you almost lost hope, but you kept going. For more stories of inspiration, Please subscribe to this channel and tap the bell so you will not miss what is next. Always remember, you are not worthless. You are not invisible. You are so much stronger than you know. Our team has invested great care into researching, writing, and producing this story for you. Our goal is to share meaningful life lessons and to bring inspiration to your day. We create every piece with true purpose, knowing that the right story at the right moment can change everything. Thank you for joining us on this journey.